Every time your phone attaches to a 5G network, even when you roam onto a carrier you have never used, something invisible has to answer one hard question. Can this device and this network trust each other without leaking your permanent identity to eavesdroppers on the radio? That handshake is the EAP AKA Prime Authentication Procedure defined in 3GPPTS 33.501. EAP means Extensible Authentication Protocol. AKA Prime is a stronger variant of authentication and key agreement, purpose built for 5G. Why should you care? Without it, a fake base station could impersonate your operator, siphon traffic, or track you by your subscription identity. With it, both sides prove who they are, and both walk away holding fresh session keys that nothing on the air interface can guess. In this lecture, we will walk the full message flow from the first N1 message out of the USIM through authentication vector generation in the home network to mutual authentication, key derivation, and the final EAP success. We will use a real world login analogy along the way so the protocol steps stop feeling abstract. By the end, the diagram of boxes and arrows should read like a story you can retell. Before any message flies, know the cast. Four roles matter, and confusing them is the fastest way to lose the plot. On the left is the UE, the user equipment, speaking through its USIM. The USIM holds the long term secret key K and your subscription identity. Think of it as the passport chip in your phone. In the middle sits the serving network, the AMF paired with the SEAF. AMF is Access and Mobility Management Function. It handles registration and mobility. SEAF is the Security Anchor Function. It holds the anchor key for this visit. When you roam, this is the visited operator. On the right is the home network, split into two functions. The AUSF authentication server function runs the EAP server side and decides success or failure. Behind it, the UDM with ARPF and SIDM stores credentials, generates authentication vectors, and can deconceal your hidden identity. Here is the part that matters. The serving network never sees your long-term key. Only the home network can mint a fresh challenge that your USIM will accept. That separation is why roaming stays secure even when you do not fully trust the visited operator. Identity is the first privacy battle. Older systems put your permanent IMSI on the air in the clear. Anyone with a cheap sniffer could track you across cells. In 5G, the permanent identity is the SUPI, Subscription Permanent Identifier. You almost never send SUPI in the clear. Instead, the phone sends either a GUTI or a SUSI. GUTI is the globally unique temporary identifier. The serving network assigned it after a previous successful registration. Using GUTI is like showing a hotel key card instead of your passport. Faster, and it reveals less. SUSI is the subscription concealed identifier. When you have no fresh GUTI, first attach, or the temporary ID expired, the phone encrypts the SUPI with the home network's public key. Only the home network's SIDF can peel that encryption back. So the rule is simple. Prefer GUTI when you have one, fall back to encryption subsidiary for assertion. So SUPI is made up of the tiny bit of Chingium that phone knows you. Whenever SUPI has been passive, listeners on the radio do not get a stable handle on you. That design choice is why 5G authentication is not just about keys. It is about identity hygiene from the first bit. Part 1 of the procedure starts on the device. The UISIM, via the mobile equipment, sends an N1 message toward the serving network's AMF and SEAF. That N1 message carries either the GUTI or the SUCI, whichever identity the UE is allowed to use right now. Call this step 1 and 2 on the standard flow. The serving network does not authenticate you by itself. It packages what it received and prepares to ask the home network, is this subscriber real, and may they attach here? A useful picture. You walk into a branch office of a bank you do not hold an account with. The clerk takes your ID card and calls the head office. The branch cannot open the vault of customer secrets. It can only relay the request. That is exactly the SEAF's job at this moment. It is a trusted messenger, not the root of trust. Everything that follows, random challenges, expected responses, ciphering keys, will be born in the home network and only then handed back down the chain. Steps 3 through 5 move the request into the home network. The serving network's SEAF sends an authentication request toward the AUSF. The AUSF then asks the UDM, specifically the ARPF, and, if needed, the SIDF, to produce a fresh authentication vector for this subscriber and this serving network. If the UE sent a SUCI, the SIDF deconceals it back to the SUPI. Authorization is checked. Is this subscriber allowed to use this serving network name? Only then does the ARPF generate the crypto material. What comes out is the heart of AKA, a random challenge called RAND, an authentication token called AUTN, which binds a sequence number and a message authentication code so the USIM can detect replays and fakes. An expected response XRES that only someone holding the long-term key K should be able to match, and a pair of keys, CK prime and IK prime, ciphering and integrity keys specialized for EAP AKA prime, derived with the serving network name mixed in so the keys are bound to this visit. Together, these form the 5G home environment authentication vector. The home network has just minted a one-time exam that only the real USIM can pass. Steps 6 through 8 bring that vector back toward the phone, carefully. The UDM returns the authentication vector to the AUSF. The AUSF does not dump every secret onto the serving network. It stores what it needs to verify the eventual response, then sends an EAP request, aka prime challenge, toward the SEAF. That challenge carries RAND and AUTN, the parts the USIM must see, not the expected response in the clear for the radio to abuse. The SEAF wraps the EAP challenge inside a NAS authentication request on the N1 interface and adds two important companions, NGKSI, which will label the new security context, and ABBA, the anti-bidding down parameter that stops an attacker from forcing the phone onto weaker security options. On the UE side, the mobile equipment hands RAND and AUTN to the USIM. The USIM checks AUTN. If the MAC is wrong or the sequence number is stale, authentication fails right there. The network just failed to prove it is the real home operator. If AUTN checks out, the USIM computes res, CK prime, and IK prime from the long-term key and RAND. That is mutual authentication starting to bite. The network already proved freshness to the USIM via AUTN before the phone has even answered. Part 2 opens with the phone answering the challenge. Steps 10 and 11, the USIM returns res and the derived CK prime and IK prime to the mobile equipment. The ME builds an EAP response, aka prime challenge, containing res and sends it in a NAS message back to the AMF and SEAF. The serving network does not try to check res locally against a copy of XRES it was never given in usable form for that purpose in the classic home-anchored path. Instead, steps 12 and onward, the SEAF transparently forwards the EAP response to the AUSF inside a NAS-IF UE authentication authenticate request. Now the home network does the comparison that matters. The AUSF checks the received res against the XRES it retained from the vector. Match means the USIM proved possession of the long-term key K. Mismatch means an imposter phone, a corrupted message, or a failed USIM. Authentication is rejected. When res equals XRES, the AUSF derives KAUSF from CK prime and IK prime, then derives the anchor key KSEAF. That anchor key is the prize the serving network actually needs. It is the root of the key hierarchy for this registration, without ever exposing K itself. Steps 15 and 16 close the user visible loop. On success, the AUSF sends EAP success to the SEAF and along with it the anchor key KSEAF. The SE forwards EAP success to the UE in an N1 message, again carrying NGKSI and ABBA, so both sides agree on the security context label and the anti-bidding down binding. On the UE, the mobile equipment derives EMSK from CK prime and IK prime, takes the most significant bits as KAUSF, then computes the same KSESF the network just installed. From KSESF ABBA and the SUPI, both the UE and the SESF derive KAMF, the key the access and mobility function will actually use to protect NAS signaling. After that, the SESF should delete KSESF. The anchor has done its job. Continuing to hold it would widen the blast radius if the serving node were later compromised. Steps 17 through 19 confirm the result back toward the home side as the standard flow requires. So the AUSF and UDM stay aligned on the outcome of this authentication run. The phone now has a live 5G security context. Encrypted, integrity-protected NAS can begin. Zoom out on mutual authentication. The property students often reduce to the network checks the password. In EAP AKA Prime, the USIM authenticates the network first. AUTN contains a MAC computed with keys only the home operator and the USIM share, plus a sequence number. If a fake GNB or a rogue SEAF invents RAND and AUTN, the MAC fails and the USIM refuses to answer. No RAIS is ever sent to an imposter home. Only after that check does the USIM emit RAIS. Now the home network authenticates the USIM by comparing RAIS to XRAIS. Both directions use the same long-term secret K, but different fields and checks, so a one-sided pass is not enough. There is a second subtlety: key separation. CK prime and IK prime are not the old LTE CK and IK. They are derived with the serving network name in the mix. A vector stolen from one operator context cannot be replayed cleanly against another. That is why the standard sets the AMF separation bit and replaces CK and IK with the primed versions before the vector leaves the ARPF. Mutual authentication plus key separation is the reason a compromised visited network still cannot permanently clone your subscription. Keys in 5G form a tree, not a single shared password. Start from the USIM's long-term key K. From K and RAND, the USIM and ARPF compute CK prime and IK prime. From those, both the UE and the AUSF derive KAUSF. From KAUSF and the serving network name, they derive KSEAF, the anchor parked at the SEAF for this visit. From KSEAF, ABBA, and SUPI, you get KAMF. From KAMF, the system derives further keys for NAS integrity, NAS encryption, and the GNB side, KGNB, which then fans out into user plane and RRC protection keys on the radio. Here is why the hierarchy matters in practice. If a GNB is compromised, you can rekey below KGNB without throwing away the entire registration. If you change AMF within certain procedures, you may rederive downstream keys without rerunning full AKA. But if K itself leaks from the USIM or the operator's credential store, no amount of rederivation saves you. That is why K never leaves the USIM and the ARPF. For exams and design reviews, remember the chain in order. K, then CK prime and IK prime, then KAUSF, then KSEAF, then KAMF, then the AS and NA keys. Each step narrows scope and limits damage.